You've served as an at-large council person,
Yes.
councilwoman.
Right.
That means that you, in a sense, have to look at the entire picture of
Yes.
the city. You don't
Yes.
have a particular district.
Right, right.
Is there a particular district that maybe you think is crying out for help, maybe needs a little bit more assistance? And what would that assistance be?
Well, I think that certainly the southeast part of town, and that would be parts of the 5th and 6th district, in terms of their infrastructure, at a first glance, looks like they need more assistance down there in terms of some of their neighborhoods. But there's only so much the city can do there. Those are, if for example, a block of homes is in disrepair, we can go in through neighborhood code and require those owners to improve their properties, and if they don't, then we go through proceedings, and eventually then we may demolish them if we can't turn them around, or if they don't pay their taxes, they go to the county. So just dumping dollars in isn't the solution. The city had $17 million in neighborhood stabilization dollars, the NSP program it was called, that went into that, significantly into that part of the city, went as far north as a couple blocks north of Parkview Hospital on State Street. So I don't know if people, driving through the neighborhood, can see $17 million worth of improvements. So I think it has to be a partnership. We will use the tools we have, but every individual, every owner has to also take pride in their property, and they have to work together. So there are limits, because I'm not sure, listening to some of our district council people on the city council, that they feel that their councilmanic districts have received their fair share. And it comes down to that. Everybody pays taxes, and obviously some areas of the city pay a lot more taxes, and those dollars are not being returned. It's not going to be returned dollar for dollar, but there are improvements to be made in every quadrant, and every district council person will tell you there are roads that need to be fixed. So there are always needs.
I don't remember off the top of my head, because I guess for one thing, it's been several years since it was discontinued, the practice of awarding each district and then the 3 at large some of the CEDIT funds.
Right.
Do you think that maybe is something that needs to be looked at reviving, and would you be in favor of increasing those allowances, the allocations?
Well, as you know, that's the one thing I differ a little bit from my fellow council people about, because I've only been on council for 4 years. So once I got on council, those dollars were cut anyway. So what the 3 of us, Councilman Bender and Councilman Schoaf and I, shared was the same amount that the other 6 were able to, quote, spend on their own. But that being said, it's a little misleading, because every council person worked with the Board of Works for their projects. The at-large projects were a little more general. For example, the Foster Park Little League or something like that, as opposed to a particular street or sidewalk project. But at the end of the day, it just spreads the dollars around the Board of Works, and a council person gets to say, I brought this to you. But they were probably going to get that project anyway. I would look at it, but my only concern is that if we just take certain dollars out of the Public Works budget so that they can be spread around, that makes the council people happy, but I'm not sure that's the best bang for our buck. And if there's a particular area or project that we should emphasize and concentrate our dollars on, we're not able to do that if we're just spreading them across 6 council districts.
Sure. Let's look at one last area. Look at the, one of the things that maybe it's always been this way and maybe it's not, I don't know. I've only been an observer, an astute in-person observer of city council meetings for the last 4 years. But one of the things that really was hammered home to me early on in this term was it just seemed like there was a disconnect between the administration and the city council. Most ordinances don't originate with the city council.
Right.
In fact, the vast majority don't.
Right.
They're coming down from the administration. The city council is the fiscal body, which has the responsibility for the fiscal funds. I guess, what are your thoughts on how well the 2 bodies work together, and what can be done to improve that?
Right. Actually, the city council is the fiscal body and the legislative body, which is why the bills come to us. We have to pass them into law, not just the contracts. We don't just approve the funding of them. But that being said, I have been amazed and disappointed by the disconnect. Granted, we are a Republican majority, barely, 5-4, and we have a Democratic mayor, but I was surprised at the partisan line that's been drawn from the beginning. We are not invited in for discussions, or many times, in fact, not even made aware of decisions that the city has made until we get an hour's notice that there's a press conference, and we don't even get those notices anymore. At least I don't. So I understand there are certain projects that may require some secrecy while something is being worked out for legal reasons. They can't disclose certain terms and information, but a lot of times that's not the case, and a lot of times it's been a reluctance. And just the bills that I put forth, I mean, some of us on council, Councilman Harper as well, and I in particular, were big proponents of more transparency in government and getting the contracts online. Councilman Harper, getting the spending and the checkbook, so to speak, online, getting the consulting contracts then online, and then working with them. It was a very long and difficult process. And at the end of the day, the information that is now available to us was nothing that would have violated a confidence. It would not have prevented a business from coming here or expanding. There was nothing untoward that we couldn't have known about. And so we usually find out about things after the fact, if at all. And I, for one, have certainly made myself very available. So it's not a matter of they've tried and nobody shows up to the meeting or is interested. I certainly am interested. So I think that's a problem. I had one councilman once say to me, well, if you have a question, why don't you just call the mayor? Well, that's funny. Actually, I don't really know what his number is. But besides that, I've had 2 calls in 3.5 years from the mayor's office, and that was to get me to vote for something that he was proposing. And other than that, there is no interaction. There's not, what are you thinking? What are you hearing from the constituents? We're boots on the ground. We're right there going to neighborhood meetings. And so wouldn't you want to know what the constituents are thinking, what the feedback is, instead of hiring a whole nother staff? I mean, granted, we might have a biased viewpoint, but you should certainly be asking for opinion. And certainly then, when you want something passed or you want some cooperation, use us. And that's not been the case. And I don't really know why, because we started off that way. And maybe it's not, although I am surprised because our current mayor served on city council for so long, and I would have thought when he sat in the seat at the table, he would have liked that information. If he hadn't received it, would certainly have understood that as a mayor, that he would want to share that with the fellow council.
I know one of the other points that you look at a lot every time it comes up, the contracts that are approved with some of the different unions. Is that another area that maybe that you would like to see some improvement between the mayor and the council and working together on those?
I think that's a classic example where there are 11 different collective bargaining units in the city, and one year we had one of the particular unions had been given a rate increase. They negotiated a particular salary increase, and so when it came to vote on the budget, theirs was already in place, and some of the council people at the table said, we can't take that away because we're interfering with the collective bargaining. I disagree with that on legal grounds, but moving on. Then the next year in the budget, we cut the salary increase proposed by the mayor, and yet the mayor then negotiated over our heads an additional % increase to all of those unions. So at what point does the mayor just assume that the city council is a rubber stamp and we're not going to be, I don't think we should be at the negotiating table. That is not our role. We're not the executive branch. But on the other hand, we do have the right to say, no, what you negotiated is not what we're willing to spend, so you're going to have to go back. And I think that's pretty apparent. I also think it's interesting that even now the executive branch, the mayor's office, has not been very forthcoming in negotiating even with some of the unions who have left. I think there are 3 who have yet to come to an agreement on their 3-year contracts.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add? Anything that's come to mind?
No, I just think it's been an interesting process. I've talked to a lot of people, as everyone does when they're running for office, but obviously being on city council and availing myself of all the opportunities to meet the public, it has been a fascinating process. I've learned a lot about the city, and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So, but I'm looking forward to a new challenge.
Well, Liz, we appreciate your time today.
Thank
It's
you
been
very much,
enjoyable.
Stephen. Thank you.